The rain fell in slow, heavy drops against the windowpane of the small brick house on Auburn Avenue. Inside, Floral Brooks, a 27-year-old nurse with tired eyes and a heart full of honesty, sat opposite her mother, Ruth Brooks, a woman known in the neighborhood for her pride, beauty, and sharp tongue. They hadn't spoken peacefully in weeks. "You think you're better than me now, huh?" Ruth said, her voice trembling with anger. "Because you've got a degree and a job downtown?" Floral shook her head, tears threatening to fall. "Mom, it's not about that. I'm just saying we can't keep living a lie. You've been telling people Uncle Ray helped pay for the house, but I did. I took the second job for this." The room went silent. The ticking clock on the wall suddenly felt too loud. Ruth's face darkened. "You calling me a liar in my own house?" Floral swallowed hard. "Mom, I'm just saying the truth. You've made everyone believe." Before she could finish, Ruth slammed her hand on the table. "Get out of my face before I do something I'll regret." Floral stood slowly, clutching her bag. Her hands trembled, but her heart felt strangely calm. "The truth shouldn't destroy love, Mom. It should set us free." Her mother's eyes blazed. "You're ungrateful, Floral. I raised you alone, and this is how you repay me? With shame." Floral turned toward the door, wiping a tear. "It's not shame. It's honesty." That night, as she walked out into the rain, she didn't know that her words, simple, raw, and honest, would set off a storm far greater than she could imagine. Because 2 hours later, flashing blue lights appeared outside her apartment building. 3 police officers stood waiting. "Miss Floral Brooks?" one of them asked. "We have a complaint filed against you, for assault and theft." Her mother had called the police. And that was how the story began. The blue and red lights painted the street in flashing agony. Neighbors peeked through half-drawn curtains, their whispers slicing through the cold night. Floral stood frozen at the door of her apartment building, confusion and fear wrapping tightly around her chest. The rain had stopped, but her world was spinning. What did you say?" she asked the officer in disbelief. The tall one, badge glinting beneath the streetlight, repeated calmly, "There's been a report filed by Ms. Ruth Brooks. She claims you stole her property and threatened her." Floral's mouth fell open. "That's my mother. I would never." "I understand, ma'am," the officer said gently, "but we still have to bring you in for questioning." A crowd was forming. Mrs. Peters from across the street whispered loudly, "Ain't that Ruth's daughter? I thought she was a nurse." Floral felt her stomach tighten as humiliation burned through her veins. She raised her hands in surrender, trying to stop her voice from shaking. "I didn't do anything wrong." Inside the patrol car, her phone vibrated non-stop. It was her best friend, Camille, calling over and over. Floral finally answered, her voice breaking. "Cammy, Mum called the police on me. They're taking me to the station." Camille gasped on the other end. "What? Why would she do that?" Floral closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "Because I told her the truth." At the precinct, the fluorescent lights buzzed like angry bees. A female officer took her statement, clearly skeptical. "So your mother accused you of stealing a gold bracelet and threatening her with a knife?" "What? That bracelet was my late grandmother's. Mum gave it to me last year." "Then why would she say otherwise?" Floral hesitated. Her heart cracked under the weight of realization. "Because she's angry, and she wants to hurt me." She was released later that night, shaken but not charged. Still, the damage was done. Word spread fast. In Atlanta, gossip traveled like wildfire. The next morning, her boss called her into his office at the clinic. "Floral, we heard something about an arrest. I know it's personal, but it reflects on the hospital's image." She swallowed hard. "Sir, it's not true. It was my mother." He sighed. "Take a week off. Sort it out." That evening, she sat alone on her couch, staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed again. It was her pastor, Reverend Lewis. "Child," his calm voice came through, Your mum called me too. She's hurting. But so are you. Don't let anger destroy what truth was meant to heal. Floral whispered. She called the police on me, Pastor. How do I forgive that? He paused. By remembering she's still your mother, even when she acts like your enemy. Floral dropped the phone and sobbed into her hands. For the first time in her life, she felt truly orphaned. But deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning of a painful road, one that could either destroy her or lead her to something she never expected: healing. The morning after the arrest, the city of Atlanta moved as if nothing had happened. Cars honked, sirens wailed, and people rushed to work, but inside Floral's heart, the world had stopped. She stood outside her mother's house, the same brick home where she had grown up, now feeling like enemy ground. Her hands trembled as she clutched a small brown envelope, the hospital documents proving she had paid the mortgage Ruth claimed Uncle Ray had covered. Maybe if she showed her mother the truth, things could calm down. She rang the doorbell. No answer. She knocked. Still nothing. From behind the curtain, she caught a glimpse, her mother's face, stiff and cold, staring back at her. Then the curtain fell. "Mum, please," Floral cried, her voice cracking. "Can we just talk?" Silence. She stood there for a long time, waiting for something. An opening, a sign, a word. But the house stayed quiet, her mother's pride sealing the door shut tighter than any lock could. The neighbors watched again. Mrs. Peters stood on her porch, shaking her head. That girl got herself in trouble. Poor Ruth. Floral turned away, humiliated and heartbroken. She walked to her car, tears streaming freely now. Later that evening, Camille came by her apartment with takeout and a fierce look in her eyes. "Girl, I don't care what your mum said, you don't deserve this. You've been working 2 jobs to take care of that woman." Floral sniffled, pushing away the food. "I just wanted her to be proud of me, Cammy. But now she hates me for speaking the truth." Camille sat beside her, holding her hand. "Sometimes, people confuse love with control. Your mum loves you, but she don't know how to show it without trying to be right all the time." That night, Floral opened her Bible, something she hadn't done in months. Her eyes fell on a verse her grandmother once underlined. "The truth shall make you free." But freedom, she realized, could be lonely. Over the next few days, Ruth's version of the story spread through the church. Some people whispered that Floral had turned against her own mother. Others called her ungrateful. When Floral tried to enter the Sunday service, one usher hesitated. "Sister Ruth said she don't want no drama in the house of God." Floral froze. "My own mum said that?" The usher lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry, sis. Maybe you should talk to her first." Floral walked back to her car, the wind biting against her face. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, tired, broken, and silenced. But in the middle of her pain, something within her hardened, not with bitterness, but with quiet strength. If love couldn't fix this right now, then maybe time and truth would. She whispered to herself, "I'm not going to let this destroy me." And though she didn't know it yet, those words would become the turning point of her life, the start of her healing, and eventually, her mother's too. By the next week, Floral's world had grown smaller. Calls stopped coming. Friends who once laughed with her during church picnics and hospital brunches now avoided her gaze. Even at the clinic, whispers trailed her down the hallway like smoke. "That's the girl whose mum called the cops on her." Imagine what she must have done. She tried to hold her head high, but each whisper felt like another wound. Her phone rang one afternoon. It was Nia, a friend from church choir. Floral smiled faintly, relieved to hear a familiar voice. "Hey, Nia," she said softly. There was hesitation on the line. "Hey, girl. Listen, I've been meaning to talk to you. People are saying things. They say you cursed your mum out and tried to take her money." Floral froze. "What? That's not true. You know me better than that." "I know," Nia said quickly, "but it's all over the group chat. Even Deacon Harris mentioned it. Maybe you should just apologize to her. Make it go away." Floral sighed, her chest tightening. "So I should apologize for telling the truth?" Sometimes peace is better than pride, Nia whispered. The line went dead. Floral stared at the wall, feeling anger rise in her chest. Everyone seemed to believe her mother's version of the story. Everyone except Camille. Camille showed up that evening with 2 cups of coffee and a fierce look in her eyes. Girl, you can't keep letting them walk over you. You told the truth. If they can't handle that, that's their problem. Floral smiled weakly. It's easy to say until it's your own mother. Camille exhaled. Maybe. But you can't lose yourself trying to fix her. That night, Floral sat on her balcony, staring at the Atlanta skyline, the blinking lights, the hum of traffic, the distant sound of laughter from people whose lives weren't falling apart. A text from an unknown number popped up. You're dead to me. Don't come near my house again. It was her mother. Floral's heart sank, her fingers trembling over the phone. She didn't reply. She couldn't. The next morning, her supervisor called her into the office again. Floral, the board heard about your family situation. We can't have your name linked with controversy right now. You're one of our best nurses, but we have to let you go temporarily. Floral blinked rapidly, her voice barely a whisper. You're firing me because my mother lied? He sighed. It's not personal, but it was. Everything about it was. She packed her things in silence, walked out of the clinic, and sat in her car, numb. For a long while, she didn't move. When she finally started the engine, she whispered to herself, if this is rock bottom, then maybe it's time to climb. That evening, she began looking for part-time nursing work outside the city. She couldn't change her mother's heart, but she could change her direction. And quietly, without realizing it, her strength was beginning to return. Because sometimes, being abandoned isn't the end. It's the beginning of becoming who you were meant to be. 2 weeks later, Floral's savings were running thin. Her rent was due, her phone bill overdue, and the silence from her mother still sliced through her every night. She sat at a small cafe downtown, scrolling through her phone for job listings, trying not to cry. The cafe was warm, filled with the smell of roasted coffee beans and soft jazz. Outside, the Atlanta streets shimmered with the glow of headlights. Excuse me, a voice said gently. Floral looked up to see a middle-aged black woman with kind eyes and silver braids. She wore hospital scrubs. Are you Floral Brooks? Floral blinked, startled. Yes. How do you know my name? The woman smiled softly. I'm Nurse Evelyn Parker. I used to work with your grandmother, Mildred Brooks. She spoke so highly of you before she passed. I heard what happened, baby. And I just want to say, don't let this world break your spirit. Floral's throat tightened. You heard about me? Atlanta's big, but gossip travels fast, Evelyn said with a sigh. Still, I don't believe half of what people say. Your grandma was a truth-teller too. And she suffered for it. Something warm stirred in Floral's chest. She always said truth cost something. Evelyn smiled, nodding. It does. But it also pays back more than lies ever could. Listen, we're short-staffed at my clinic in Midtown. It's not fancy, but it's honest work. I can talk to the director for you. Floral's eyes widened. You'd do that for me? Evelyn reached across the table and took her hand. Your grandmother once helped me when I had nothing. I'm just returning the favor. Floral's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in weeks, she felt seen, not as a disgrace, not as a rumor, but as a human being. 2 days later, she walked into Hope Medical Center, a modest but lively community clinic serving low-income families. The director, a calm man with glasses named Dr. Lee, interviewed her briefly. I've heard good things about your work at Fulton General, he said. And Nurse Parker speaks highly of you. Welcome aboard. Floral smiled genuinely, relief washing over her. Thank you, sir. As she settled into her new role, treating patients from all walks of life, something inside her began to heal. The laughter of children in the waiting room, the gratitude in the eyes of elderly patients. It reminded her why she became a nurse in the first place. But late at night, when the city quieted and her apartment felt too empty, She still found herself staring at her mother's contact photo on her phone, her finger hovering over call. Every time, she stopped herself. She wanted to forgive, but her wounds were still open. And though she didn't know it yet, fate was already weaving the next thread, one that would bring her face to face with her mother again, in a way neither of them expected. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. Floral was at the clinic when her phone rang, an unknown number. She almost ignored it until she noticed the name Emory Hospital flashing on the caller ID. "Hello," she said, her voice cautious. "Is this Miss Floral Brooks?" a nurse asked. "Your mother, Mrs. Ruth Brooks, was brought in this morning. She collapsed at a grocery store. She's stable but unconscious. You're listed as her emergency contact." The world around her blurred. Floral gripped the counter, her voice trembling. "I'll be there right away." By the time she reached the hospital, her mother lay in a pale blue gown, oxygen tubes snaking around her face. The proud, strong woman who once called the police on her now looked fragile, small even. Camille rushed in moments later. "You okay?" Floral nodded slowly, tears already forming. "She looks so weak. I don't know what to feel." A doctor approached. "She suffered a mild stroke. It seems she's been under a lot of stress. We'll monitor her for the next few days." Floral sat beside her mother's bed, staring at her hands, the same hands that once smacked her, cooked her meals, and tucked her in at night. She whispered, "Mum, it's me. I'm here." Ruth didn't respond. Her breathing was steady, but her silence was heavy. That night, Floral stayed by her side. She prayed softly, something she hadn't done since the police came that night. "God, I don't know if she'll ever forgive me, but please, give me strength to forgive her." 3 days later, Ruth regained consciousness. Her eyes fluttered open, confusion crossing her face. When she saw Floral sitting there, her lips trembled. "You came," she whispered weakly. Floral nodded, her voice gentle. "Of course I did, Mum." Ruth looked away, tears welling. "After everything I did, why?" Floral hesitated, her throat tightening. "Because you're my mother. That's never going to change." Ruth stared at the ceiling for a long moment. "I was angry. I thought you wanted to embarrass me. I didn't know the truth could feel like betrayal." Floral's voice softened. "It wasn't to shame you. I just wanted you to stop lying. You've carried so much pride, Mum. It's been killing you." Ruth turned toward her daughter, eyes filled with regret. "I lied because I was ashamed. I didn't want people to know you were working so hard for me. I wanted them to think I was still strong." Floral reached for her hand. "Mum, strength isn't pretending you're perfect. It's owning your truth." Tears rolled down Ruth's face. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." Floral smiled faintly, wiping her tears. "Good thing forgiveness isn't about deserving. It's about love." In that small hospital room, something shifted. Years of anger, guilt, and misunderstanding began to melt away. The next few days were filled with small moments, shared meals, laughter over old stories, even quiet prayers. For the first time in years, they talked like mother and daughter again. But the road ahead wasn't smooth. Some wounds took longer to close than others. When Ruth was discharged from the hospital, Floral brought her home. The same house that had once felt like a battlefield now became a space of slow healing. Neighbors whispered again, but this time the story was different. "Did you hear? Ruth's daughter took her back in. After all that mess. Maybe that girl got more heart than any of us thought." Inside, Floral cooked while Ruth sat in the living room, watching her quietly. "You still make cornbread like your grandma," Ruth said softly. Floral chuckled. "She taught me well." A pause lingered between them. Then Ruth said, "You were right about the house. You paid for it. I told the church the truth yesterday." Floral froze, spoon in hand. "You did." Ruth nodded, eyes glistening. "It was the hardest thing I ever said in my life. But it felt freeing." Floral smiled, her heart swelling with quiet pride. "I'm proud of you, Mum." That Sunday, Ruth returned to church with Floral by her side. Whispering stopped when they walked in together. Reverend Lewis smiled from the pulpit. "Sometimes," he said mid-sermon, glancing at them, "God uses truth to break us only so he can rebuild us stronger." When the service ended, women from the congregation approached Ruth, some apologetic, others in tears. Ruth held her daughter's hand tightly, as if finally realizing the treasure she had almost lost. Weeks later, Floral found an envelope on her nightstand. Her mother must have placed it there quietly the night before. It read, "My dear Floral, you were right, truth should never destroy love. I see that now. I was blinded by fear and pride. You showed me the kind of woman your grandmother prayed you'd become, brave, kind, and unashamed of what's right. If I could turn back time, I'd take away your pain. But since I can't, I'll spend the rest of my life loving you better than I did before. Forgive me, my child. Love, your mum." Floral pressed the letter to her chest, tears falling freely. For the first time in a long time, the ache in her heart softened. That evening, they sat on the porch together, watching the sunset. Ruth leaned her head on her daughter's shoulder. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think admitting wrong meant weakness. But now I know it means strength." Floral smiled faintly. "Grandma always said the truth doesn't just free you, it cleanses your soul." Ruth chuckled, voice raspy but warm. That old woman was always right. A year later, Floral walked across the stage at a nursing conference to receive the Community Caregiver of the Year award for her work at Hope Medical Center. As she gave her speech, her eyes met her mother's in the front row. Ruth was dressed elegantly, tears shining in her eyes. "My journey taught me something," Floral said to the crowd, her voice steady. "Truth may break relationships for a season, but if it's spoken in love, it can heal them forever." The audience erupted in applause. After the event, Ruth hugged her tightly. "You saved my life twice, Floral, once with your honesty and once with your heart." Floral smiled through her tears. "And you taught me that love isn't perfect, Mum. It's just patient." They stood there for a long time, holding each other as flashes from cameras surrounded them, a mother and daughter once divided by pride, now reunited by truth. Outside, the Atlanta evening shimmered with golden light, as if heaven itself approved of their reconciliation. And in that moment, Floral realized something her grandmother had always whispered in prayer. When truth and love finally meet, darkness has no choice but to fade.